What the seller is responsible for is disclosing unseen defects in your property that they are aware of. If they're not aware of something that you cannot see with your eye, if they don't have knowledge, they cannot inform you. So when you're buying a property, as in, there's multiple scenarios that you have to consider in terms of defects, and exactly what we said before, what a home inspection can reveal when we're buying a property, as in.
Today, we're joined by Amanda Willing, the founder of Willing Law, located in the heart of Essex County. After her studies at University of Windsor, Faculty of Law, and being called to the bar, Amanda swiftly established her firm specializing in real estate, commercial transactions, private lending, and Canadian immigration. One of Amanda's key contributions to the legal landscape is her emphasis on accessibility, understanding the demands and constraints faced by her clients. Amanda has implemented innovative solutions to overcome traditional barriers in legal consultations. Notably, Amanda and Willing Law have embraced the use of technology to offer virtual appointments and electronic signings. This approach allows clients the flexibility to engage in legal matters from the comfort of their homes or offices, eliminating the need for in-person meetings that may be challenging during regular work hours. Outside the office, Amanda's passions include fitness and spending time with her beloved dogs, Romeo and Bear, along with indulging in reruns of Grey's Anatomy and House. Today, Amanda is here to share her insights in the legalities of the housing market, making complex legal concepts accessible to our audience. Hello, Amanda.
Thank you for that great introduction.
You're welcome. So, Amanda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So let's get right into it. What are the most common legal issues you encounter with home buyers and sellers in today's market? If you could name your top 3, what would they be?
Okay, so I guess I'll just start with naming the 3, and then I can kind of delve into why I think these are common legal issues and what we can do to kind of address them before they become issues. So number 1, tenancies. In my practice, I deal a lot with investors, so buying rental properties. So I see a lot of issues concerning tenants. Number 2, financing. And number 3, failure for clients to perform their final walkthroughs of their property. So if we kind of circle back to tenancies, really failing to address adequately in the agreement, what ifs. So if we're getting vacant possession, what if the tenant fails to vacate on closing? Are we going to continue with the agreement? Is the buyer going to assume the tenant? What's going to happen? And for most of these issues relating to tenancy, they are really addressed on the day of closing. So we need to be proactive and really address this kind of concern from the initial drafting of the contract to prevent, issues again on the day of closing, and really putting the whole transaction into jeopardy if we cannot come to some sort of agreement on that. So it's a big issue, I find, specifically in Windsor, when there's a lot of kind of university-based tenancies and a lot of investments around the university. So something I like to kind of tell people to just keep an eye out for when we are kind of discussing tenancies and assuming them.
Yeah. So I know even from a mortgage perspective, when we are getting an approval on a mortgage for a client, and we know, like, let's say the listing says, the MLS says that it is currently tenanted, like being rented out. The lenders want to make sure that if these clients are buying the home to own or occupy, so that means they're going to live in the home, that the tenants have to be out by the day of closing, or it could cause issues with closing the deal with the lender if they're not out. If the lawyer can't confirm that they have indeed vacated the home. Have you seen that?
Yeah, correct. Exactly right. So we'll see, conditions in our instructions saying owner occupied, and more often than not, we need to have the client sign a statutory declaration stating that they're going to be moving in. So this is something that needs to be like proactively addressed, at the initial stage of drafting the contract, because then as the mortgage agent on the file and the lawyer on the file, we have the duty to the lender to kind of fulfill those outstanding conditions responsibly.
Perfect. And then, so you mentioned finances being one of them,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
So I'm sure this is kind of a sore spot in your practice as well, but clients not addressing those outstanding documents, not being kind of proactive in getting those bank statements, income statements to you in a timely manner. And that kind of freezes the progression of the file and how quickly, you can look at it. Underwriting can kind of swiftly move it to instructing stages. So that's kind of a common legal issue that not always, but sometimes comes up when, a couple days before closing, we haven't seen any instructions. And then it kind of, the root of the cause comes from kind of the client not addressing and not really taking serious getting those documents to you on time.
Yeah, we do encounter that sometimes where we'll email the client and we'll need certain documentation. I want to say down payment is the biggest one. It's because down payment is not always available a month before closing. Sometimes it's gifted or it's
Yeah.
being accumulated right up until about a week before closing. So lenders do want to, they have conditions that they have to tick off. And if one of them or two of them are not ticked off, even though you have the paperwork, the lawyers have the paperwork, it's still a condition that needs to be satisfied on the file. And if it's not satisfied, it can hold up the closing. So we're always trying to make sure that 2 weeks, a month prior to closing, the conditions are all satisfied, whether it's down payment or even simple things like void checks.
Yeah.
Void checks.
Yeah.
We've had issues where um, we've had issues where somehow the lender finds out that the client changed jobs. That can be an issue too. So
Mhm.
we would have to like get new letters of employment, making sure that they're not on probation on their new job. So things like that
Delay.
can
Yeah.
happen last minute.
Yeah. 100%. And I think on my side, I question when I don't see broker complete, and then that flags me to there may still be issues with, getting documents back. Even though my side of things may be moving forward, I know on the back end there's something wrong. So I think that's kind of on the lines of what you're speaking about for sure.
And I think, I mean, speaking to lawyers all the time, I think on your side, you can't even tell what conditions are outstanding, right?
No, I
Right?
can't.
So if it is a down payment verification condition, you just see that there's conditions outstanding. You don't know what conditions are actually outstanding. So
Yeah.
what I usually like to do is I contact the lawyer and say, by the way, you've received instructions. We still need this, okay? And I'll say, Amanda, if you talk to the client, this is what we still need. So now that you and I are on top of it, the client knows, oh, I need to get this to
Yeah.
Lisa. Like this is important. Your file is not going to close if these conditions are not are not satisfied.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I
Now you did mention a third item.
Yep. So, common legal issue number three, I would
Yeah.
say, clients not performing their final walkthrough, a day before closing. I normally see clients have access to 3 walkthroughs. They may not do any walkthroughs, or they may do one kind of when there's still that initial excitement of acquiring the property. But, as time goes by, that it may not be top of mind. It may be financing and things like that. So always advising my clients to take that opportunity and walk through the property a day before closing to bring to my attention if there are things that need to be fixed, in terms of repair, holdbacks. And it's better to address these issues prior to the exchange of funds because after, everything is said and done, it's very difficult to get any sort of compensation from the seller after the transaction has completed. So having going through your walkthrough and bringing these issues to your lawyer's attention is very important. So really going through that walkthrough and not having this issue exist on closing.
And I know from like personal experience with my clients and my own experiences, because when I buy a property and I have a few that I own that I rent out, and every time I go to close on a property, you kind of forget, oh shoot, I gotta schedule my walkthrough. And if your real estate agent doesn't reach out to you and you forget, it can be forgotten about,
Yeah.
and you take the keys and you walk into the property and you're like, okay,
Guys,
where are the appliances?
100%, 100%. Yeah, exactly.
The appliances were all included, right? And they're all
Yeah.
gone, right?
Yeah.
And so try to get those appliances back um after closing is it is very important. I always tell my clients, even though I am not a lawyer, I always say to them, make sure that you do your final walkthrough to
Yeah.
make sure that it is very important. You don't want to walk in and see things disappear. I had one client where the island was gone.
Oh
The
my God.
the kitchen island was
That's
gone,
a fixture.
and
Like, that's affixed to the ground.
fixed
Yeah.
to the ground. I don't know how it disappeared, but he actually did the walkthrough and and the island was gone. The deal ended up closing. I forget what happened, but there was like a credit that was done. So if I think it was a credit.
Yep.
So if the island disappears or the appliances are gone, like no worries, you can always go back and say, hey,
Mhm.
it's going to cost me $10,000 to get these appliances. Either bring them back, okay, before closing, right?
Yep.
Or I want the
And a
value credited.
yeah, or credit, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, then it's more proactive if we address it that way. If we close, funds are exchanged, the only sort of remedy we have available to us is small claims court. And then we have to kind of address, legal fees pursuing that. And is it really going to be cost effective to go after a $5,000, appliance when you're facing those legal fees also at that time? So walkthroughs
Exactly.
are important. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes 20 minutes to do a walkthrough.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Now, the next question is, can you explain the legal process of buying a home and the key stages where a lawyer is involved? So I know in my case, when I'm getting a mortgage approval for a client, the legal process takes it's about a week or a week and a half prior to closing. So I always say to my lawyers, God bless your hearts. I don't know how you do it within a week to a week and a half. Like
Yeah.
you guys are magicians, because if I always, I wish I could, and I'll pay for it to sit in your office to see what you guys actually do, because I know what you guys do, but it's crazy how you can get it all done within a week. So please explain that legal process, the whole process.
For sure. So ideally, the client would come to us at the time of signing their agreement. So we could have fresh eyes on it, a neutral perspective, making sure everything is aligning with their goals and what they want to accomplish with the transaction. But normally that doesn't happen. We get the contract when it's fully executed. So we just have to take it and work with what we have. So we get the agreement, we document the important dates in the contract. So the completion date, the requisition date, if it's, a multifamily property, documenting that because we need to ensure we have some off title searches done in a timely manner for our requisition letter, which we have to search title for, pull anything we need to remove from title and address any issues, that would encumber title that we need to have removed prior to our client taking ownership. We run writ searches, so making sure there's no outstanding judgments against the seller that would affect our client's title at the end of the day. And then, as you mentioned, mortgage instructions. So we take those instructions from the lender. We prepare the security to be registered on title. So once we have all of that good stuff, we meet with the client, sign all the documents, closing paperwork, mortgage documents, advise the client, what's the funds required for closing. So down payment, land transfer tax, title insurance premium, legal fees. So they prepare those closing funds. And then once we have all the lender funds, client funds, we ensure everything is in order, and then we proceed to close on the day of, which includes dispersing funds or paying funds out to a lender if we're acting for a seller, and then registering, and then releasing the keys.
Wow, you make it sound easy.
I have it down to a science, trust me.
I just know as you're talking and you're bringing up all these points, I just know that things can happen. Like, and I'm going to say it, shit can hit the fan.
Real fast, yeah,
You
definitely.
say that?
Yeah, you can.
Like, and
100%. No, things can go wrong really fast. And that's kind of like just an oversimplification of what happened. So things don't always go in that order. Hiccups arise that you have to address. I like to say, like, no one file is the same. There's always something that is different. And it's always, sometimes it's a learning curve. Sometimes it's a matter of negotiations, whatever it has to, be, but no file is different. But at the end of the day, like, our common goal is working for the client and making sure that at every stage they're knowledgeable and aware of what's going on. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the view I take on that is like, I'm representing my client, I'm making sure that my role in their transaction is to kind of make it go as seamless as possible. And whatever those hiccups are, kind of tackle them head on. Don't let them kind of, snowball into a big glacier, or whatever terminology is best to use for a big issue on closing, and to address those things as they come up. Because in every practice, I mean, nothing goes always according to plan.
Yeah, yeah. And this is why, like on my end, I always like to know who the lawyer is. And if we know who the lawyer is right from the get-go, I try to get the lender to instruct you as soon as possible. And what we mean by instruct is like send you the paperwork. So you're aware, you open up the file and you can get working on it as soon as possible, because we don't want to leave things to last minute
Yeah,
where sometimes we don't have the information of that lawyer to send paperwork to up until about a week before closing. And that's when I worry about things because I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not going to have time to
yeah,
the lawyer. Yeah. So I think a good week and a half prior to closing, or even 10 days to 2 weeks is good
yeah.
to send you
That's
paperwork,
safe. Yeah.
not leave it till, because then you run the risk of not closing on time, which
100%,
can
yeah. Even if you have a 90-day closing, that's fantastic. But that doesn't mean nothing if you leave everything to,
last minute.
20 days before closing. So extensions are just expensive and kind of stressful for all parties involved. So, you know,
Yep. Yeah.
instructions early are always good in my books.
Yep. Yep. Um, what are the biggest legal mistakes people make when buying or selling a home, and how can they be avoided?
So I think one of the biggest legal mistakes that people can make, which I try to address before it happens, is buying and selling on the same day. So if you were selling your property and you're relying on those sale proceeds to go ahead and purchase your new property, we're leaving a lot up to chance. A lot of things have to fall in perfect alignment to close both transactions on the same day. So, just starting off with the sale, we're relying on that buyer of your property to, get the funds to your lawyer relatively early in the day. Um, Making sure there's no kind of holds on the funds, there's no issues with that transaction, because that needs to fully complete keys released, registrations, everything before we can use and have access to those funds to apply to your purchase. So there's just so many things that potentially could delay each transaction that ideally we would have at least one business day between both, if not more, to account for any kind of difficulties or time delays in the buying and selling. We kind of already discussed mortgage instruction, so I won't kind of tap on that too
Mm.
much now, but
The resolution for that, like to solve that issue, buying and closing on the same day, I think is something that I always have a conversation about with my clients. So I have a client right now that is closing on March 28th,
mhm,
just sold her house. And I advised her, like, you don't have to close on March 28th.
yeah,
You can close on a later date. Oh, I didn't know that you could do that.
yeah,
Yeah, but the down payment is coming from the sale of my home on March, like from the sale of my home. So I need that money to close on March 28th. So a lot of people don't know the product. It's called bridge financing. And bridge financing is, let's say there's $200,000 coming from the sale of your home. Well, if they don't close on the same day, where am I going to get that $200,000? Well, you can call Uncle Bob and he'll give you the $200,000 for, let's say, 2 weeks. Or the lender gives you a loan for that $200,000. And usually that loan is really like it's 7% interest or something like that
yeah,
for the time gap there. So if you're closing on March 28th on your purchase and your sale happens on April 10, that's 12 days. Interest only payments on $200,000 is nothing.
yeah,
Okay. And like, let's say they're $300. That it gives you so much time to move, to paint, to
yeah,
rip out the rugs, put in hardwood. Like it just gives you time to like prepare that home before you go to sell your property. And then you have to move on the same day because I've seen a lot of things that can go wrong. Anybody listening to this and have closed on the same day knows what I'm talking about.
yeah, 100%. And I think also clients, they struggle with the concept of not knowing where to put their belongings if they are selling and then buying. But just kind of getting over that concept of things and just getting a storage unit, just getting a hotel for a night, and finding solutions to your belongings and where you're going to sleep. Because if we don't close, we have a lot more money on the line than what you're going to pay for a storage unit or a hotel for one night. So I kind of like to put that into perspective for clients when they're kind of negotiating what they're going to do in those situations. And if it's for the reverse situation, if you're buying and then selling, the bridge mortgage is definitely the solution to that.
And a lot of times people think bridge financing is a lot of money, which it really isn't.
Yeah.
Um, on $100,000, if I did the calculation, actually, let me just grab. So on 200,000 times 7%, let's call it, divided by 365 days times 10 days, that's $383.
Yeah.
$383. Like I would pay that
100%.
to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make sure that you have, so it's not thousands of dollars. Yeah, so a lot of people think it's expensive.
Yeah, and that's why, when you're speaking to, a knowledgeable agent like yourself, breaking it down makes it more kind of digestible and doable at the end of the day. And knowledge is power. So if you have that knowledge before, it really helps in making those really difficult decisions with, lots and lots of money on the line. So having that, key information is really powerful in making these, decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to our next question. Can you discuss the importance of title insurance and what it protects you against? And you know what? This is a topic that's really important because a lot of people don't know what title insurance is and why do we pay for it and what does it protect us and when do we need it? So yeah, please explain that.
Yeah. So I get this question almost daily from clients when we're kind of discussing those documents for we're talking about title insurance and signing and bringing it to their attention that we are purchasing these policies. So it's a very important form of insurance that lenders require when they're providing you funds for a property for a closing. So lender title insurance is mandatory. Owner title insurance is not mandatory in Ontario, but personally, my practice, my firm, we do not close real estate transactions without an owner title insurance policy in place because it is that important that clients understand they absolutely it's necessary when you're acquiring interest in property. So I'll just kind of list off the key things that title insurance protects lenders and owners against. So it protects things against fraud, forged documents, mistakes in the public record, undisclosed liens or mortgages, unpaid utility bills from the previous seller, unpaid property taxes. It also includes coverage for survey. So we do not normally go out and order a new survey when we're purchasing property. So title insurance acknowledges this and specifically provides coverage against not having a survey. So they protect your boundary lines, any errors in the property deed that we see in the public record, essentially. So it's highly valuable. And how it works is it's a one-time premium paid on closing. So the lawyer will collect that premium and it protects the owner and the lender for the duration of their interest in the property. So if the lender buys the property, say today, as long as they hold that interest, they will be protected. I will never ask the client for another premium for their title insurance policy. And the same goes with the lender. As long as the lender has that security, that charge on title, they are protected. So it's a relatively low premium for the benefits and the rewards you get. And it's insurance at the end of the day. You don't need it until you need it. So it's always good to have in place.
So how much, can you tell me what the price of lender title insurance is, which is mandatory, and the owner's title insurance, what the premiums are for both? And the owner's is not mandatory.
Owners is not mandatory, yeah. But I don't close transactions without it. But it depends on the purchase price of your property, the type of property you're getting for the owner policy. So purchase price, type of policy. If we need to disclose any certain issues with title, we need to get specific underwriting and get approval for those issues. So the policy for our owner, purchase price, type of property involved. For the lender policy, it's based on the principal of the mortgage. So, the higher your mortgage principal is, the higher your premium will be. It's just the risk involved and what that premium looks like for the client at the end of the day.
But do they range, they range around what, $300?
Yeah, so kind of starting if we're talking very low purchase price, if we're dealing with a single family, kind of a $300-400 purchase price, they kind of start around 300 and can work up to, obviously sky limitless depending on the purchase price. So it's kind of roughly starting around $300-400.
$400. Okay. I'd like to bring in my own personal example where I got a property tax bill after the closing date, and it was something like $600 or something like that. And it wasn't my tax bill, it was the previous owner's tax bill. And I was able to take that to my lawyer and at the time, and because of title insurance, it was paid. I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
because of title insurance. If it wasn't for that, I think I would have had to pay for it, right?
100%, because there's no one else to knock on for that. The seller's going to be adios, like they're not going to respond to you. The lawyer can reach out to your lawyer can reach out to the seller's lawyer, but getting that response is going to be, it's going to be an echo. It's not going to go answered. It's going to
Yeah.
be relentless trying to follow up and not hearing back. In the meantime, the interest is accruing on that outstanding balance. And if no one is going to pay that, we don't have a seller to collect that from. We don't have title insurance to collect it from. It falls on the property owner at the end of the day. So you would have had to pay that. Yeah.
Now, can you tell me why you don't close your transactions without owner's title insurance?
Yeah, so basically, because of the fraud in the real estate market, I know my buyers are protected going forward. I And the nature of having undisclosed liens, mortgages, interest in property, I can only see what's on the public record. If there's anything fraudulent going on with the transaction or the property that I cannot physically see, my clients need to be protected against that. So that's kind of my number one reason why I don't close transactions without it. And I guess a third point, I don't know if this is my second or third, but surveys. We need to know your property boundaries are protected. Going out and purchasing a survey is going to cost you $2,000 to $3,000. So just that kind of principle alone is why I don't close, transactions without it.
Yeah. So an example for owner's title insurance would be something like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I move into the property and I look at the lines and I think that the fence that was built next door to me was on my property
Yeah.
or is on my property. Is this something that lender's title insurance would protect or owner's title insurance would protect?
So I think in that scenario, we would pursue in this. We may be corrected if the title insurance policy wants us to also pursue a lender claim, but it would more so be the owner policy
Yeah.
and bringing that claim forth and seeing what the the underwriter requires us to present to them at the end of the day.
Yep, yep. So it's good to educate yourself on what they both cover. You're buying one of the largest asset in your
Yeah,
lifetime, unless you're buying a plaza
yeah, that would be pretty
later
big.
on. So it is good to protect it. It's a one-time premium and it protects you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And the lender and everybody, like anybody involved that has interest in that property,
correct.
technically, right? Yeah. So the next question is, in a competitive housing market, buyers sometimes skip the inspection to make their offer more appealing. Actually, they skip the financing too sometimes to make their
Yeah.
offer more appealing. What are the legal implications of this decision?
So we kind of like tapped on this earlier, but when we're looking at property, our emotions are so heightened. We're excited, we're kind of in the zone. We found a property within our budget. Fantastic. Let's go take a look at it. We're not looking at what's wrong with the property. We're seeing kind of all of the things that we want to see to make this work. So not having a home inspection clause leaves a lot of vulnerability for the purchaser. Not getting that home inspection clause leaves us, not able to pursue these issues after a fully binding contract has been signed. So if there are issues, we're kind of out of luck at the end of the day. Obviously, as the lawyer, I will advocate that these issues be addressed and remedied, and whether we need to address a holdback or a price abatement, I will advance the client's position. But the seller's lawyer could easily come back to me and say, you're just short out of luck because your client forgone getting a home inspection, and they kind of waived their right to bring these issues forward, after the fact. So there's a lot of risk and exposure um, with not getting that home inspection.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I encounter this all the time where we have a pre-approval and all the documentation that is required for the approval. And the only missing piece of the puzzle that we need for a full approval is the property. So when you go to put an offer on a home,
Yeah.
the lender might come back and not like the evaluation of the property, or might not like the condition of the property, or they might even see a history on that property that the client might not have seen. So they have the data. So clients call me and they want to know if they can go in cash. And I explained the pre-approval process and everything, but I really worry about the inspection condition, because I've put in an offer without an inspection,
Yep.
and that house had problems with it afterwards. Had I had an inspection, I probably wouldn't have purchased that home.
Yep.
But it was my decision. It cost me, I don't know, $20,000 to $25,000. But if I had had the inspection, I would have known about it. I probably wouldn't have purchased the home. And if I had purchased the home, I might have been, I might have gone back and said, hey, there's an issue. Can we lower the price, or can you fix it before I purchase, before the home closes? So
Yeah. And then you have the option to back out if it's a condition, right? If you're not satisfied with it, you have
back,
many options to exercise, rather than, you're stuck with what you got at the end of
yeah.
the day. Yeah.
And I think I've seen a lot of that in the past few years during the pandemic, where there were 15 offers on a home, and and I was one of them. I put an offer without an inspection condition to win
Yeah.
the property. But I think we're in a better situation now where we can put an inspection condition.
Yeah. I'm seeing them more frequently now. People are taking that due diligence period and are taking it seriously, and are kind of being more proactive with getting those home inspections. So it's good to see. I did notice the lack thereof during the housing boom, or when we were getting really good mortgage rates. People were going crazy. But yeah, seeing a
Yeah.
rise in home inspections now, so it's a good thing. And I
Yep.
do tell clients not to waive that lightly when they're making their agreements.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. It's kind of related.
Yeah.
How can a buyer legally protect themselves when purchasing a property as is?
When we talk about as in condition, we're referring to, when we first set eyes on this property, that's the as in condition. So when we walk through, if there's a toilet that's not working, a hole in the wall, that's what we're buying. That's the as in condition. So we have a concept in Ontario that's called buyer beware. And this directly puts the onus on the buyer of property to make inquiries into the condition and what's wrong with the property. Sellers do not have to disclose what's visible to the naked eye. So if there's a faucet not working, you go in and try it, the seller is not responsible for that. What the seller is responsible for is disclosing unseen defects in your property that they are aware of. If they're not aware of something that you cannot see with your eye, if they don't have knowledge, they cannot inform you. So when you're buying a property as in, there's multiple scenarios that you have to consider in terms of defects, and exactly what we said before, what a home inspection can reveal when we're buying a property as in.
Okay, so if there is, like, because we see it all the time on listings, and it says as is.
Yeah.
And when I look at a listing and I see those words, I worry about that property, because why is it saying as
Why
is?
does it have that in there? Yeah, why is this being addressed? Why is that necessary? And that should raise red flags,
Yeah, it's like buying a vehicle. Imagine if I went into a dealership and saw on the vehicle, sticker as is.
Yeah,
Would I buy that vehicle?
I would run. I'm gonna be sitting in the mechanic just draining my bank account. So why don't we apply that concept to property?
right?
Yeah.
Only like 50 times more expensive than
Right? Yeah, yeah, I do get worried when I see that because yeah, you start to think what is this property actually what's wrong with it?
what's wrong with it.
It's just a matter of what, not if, what.
Yes, yes. Is there something you can tell us that can make the home buying or selling process better from a legal perspective? Like what makes it smooth for you, for the whole process to go smoothly so you're not, worried about the next step or oh boy, like surprises or anything like that, that we can like make it go smoothly.
So I guess I can address this from a buying perspective and a selling perspective. So in terms of selling, really being aware of what your obligations are. Are you providing vacant possession? So vacant possession means not only are we kind of removing our physical bodies from the property, we're also removing like our chattels, our personal belongings, our garbage, everything that is not in the contract essentially. So we do have a lot of issues sort of arise on the day of that the buyer comes to us and says, there's so much garbage on the front lawn. This is wrong. There's garbage inside, there's furniture, there's leftover things. So that's something that can be proactively be addressed by the seller, being knowledgeable about not only do they have to be gone, their stuff has to be gone. So that's something that can make kind of the day of closing a little bit more smoother and seamless. Just being aware of your responsibilities as a seller when you are in fact selling a vacant possession property. Um, in terms of buying, I mean, kind of just being proactive throughout the entire process. There's a lot of components involved in terms of dealing with your realtor, fulfilling those conditions, now responding to your mortgage agent and getting those conditions satisfied, getting a home insurance policy, so dealing with your insurance agent and then your lawyer and satisfying those requests, just making sure things are getting addressed in a timely manner and being in contact with the people who are trying to work with you and for you and trying to help you accomplish your goal and just being at the end of the day proactive and responsive to the people who are trying to be there and guide you through the process.
Yeah.
Yep.
A little tip that I mean, I learned this the hard way. So I purchased a property and it was a rental and I was buying it, I was buying it as a rental, like to rent out. And I had people moving in like the next day. I think my closing date was like March 30 or something like that. And I had people moving in like April 1st. So I do my walkthrough and the house was like garbage. I called my tenant and said, we're going to need a few more days to get this ready for you, which was not a problem. But what I learned is moving forward on every other property that I purchased, I put it in my purchase agreement that if I should do my walkthrough and the house is like not clean or there's a lot of garbage, we're going to deduct $1,000 from the purchase price.
Yep.
Okay. And lo and behold, every time I do a walkthrough, the house
Immaculate.
is immaculate. Like
That's,
there's nothing, no garbage.
I love it. That's your
This
secret
is
tip.
really cool.
I'm gonna tell everyone now.
Yeah, like because they don't want, like, I mean, because it's beautiful. Like, I mean, I
Inspired,
think
yeah. That's
so
amazing.
to the point that my realtors now, like they've advised their clients to do that. I mean, it's just learning the hard way, but
Yeah,
um
that's
that was,
fantastic.
yeah, so that was a tip from, from my own
Yeah,
personal
yeah.
experience.
Oh, I love that. Perfect. Yeah. No one wants to pay $1,000. They'd rather, just do the work, what you're supposed to do and call it a day.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So the other question I have for you is during the process, why is it important for all parties involved, realtor, mortgage broker, lawyer, to be all on the same page? Why should we all be communicating together. And I ask this because sometimes I explain to my clients that I need to know who your realtor is. I need to know, I need to know. And why is that we need to know who they are? So then that way, why do we need to know this? I like to hear it from somebody else's perspective in
Yeah.
the process, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, for sure. So I like buying real estate, it takes a village. So it's not just the client, it's everyone. So when we're raising, the file from signing to closing, there's so many people involved, and working in isolation is just not going to cut it. It's not going to be, the most optimal experience for the client. If you're trying to address something with the client, and the client comes to me for an issue, and I was like, okay, why don't I just call Rasha directly, see what's going on, see if I can address this in our signing appointment, bring this to the attention of the client the next time I speak to them, and really work collaboratively to make everyone get their job done in a happy way. No one's feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or that their kind of aspect is not getting pulled forward with the collective, and just being a team at the end of the day, because there's everyone plays such a vital role in this. So working as a collaborative effort is really optimal and beneficial for the client at the end of the day.
I'll give you an example of something that just recently happened. We have a purchase, like a mortgage approval set to close February 29th. Everything was all done and completed to close February 29th. Okay. About early, the end of January, I still didn't have the lawyer's information. So I reached out to the client, and in my email and by phone, who is your lawyer? I need to know who your lawyer is so we can send the paperwork. Nothing, no response. And I'm looking at the file and I'm like, it's February 29th. We still have time. Maybe they're just still not, we don't know they still don't know who
Yeah.
the lawyer is. I get a call, I think it was February 9th, sorry, like the first week of February. Our lawyer does not have the paperwork. I'm like, who's your lawyer? I sent the lawyer, like the email of who. So anyway, the closing date now was changed. I believe it was February 9th or somewhere around there. And we didn't know about it. The real estate office never sent us the amendment to let us know that the closing date has been
Yep.
moved. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, that's my phone. And we have no idea. So had I known who the lawyer was, who the realtor was, I would have known to make sure that that the paperwork gets out on time. So
Yep.
if information is missing, things can go wrong. And this is why everybody needs to be aware of who's got their hands in this transaction to make sure it gets done smoothly.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you're saying. Yeah, and especially when we're talking about, extensions and amendments, sometimes it will be done without my knowledge. And I find out after the fact, and I'm like, okay, can you please forward me these amendments, these extensions? I need to have firsthand knowledge of what's going on here. So
Yeah,
working together, realtor, agent, mortgage agent, lawyer, it's very important, and you spoke directly to that. So yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Perfect. Now, my final question usually is not related to what you do, but if you were to choose another like a side hustle or another industry that you wanted to work in, or just something else, what would
Yeah.
that be?
So this is going to sound like really ridiculous, but it's something that kind of makes me laugh on a daily basis. And like me and my family, we kind of like do these things together. But so when people's pets have their own like TikTok pages or their own Instagram pages, I'd love to make my boys famous. Like I'd love that. if I could make them famous and voice them over and like make them do funny things and make a good profit off of it, like that would be like ideal because we have so much fun and enjoyment just like making fun of them, putting words into their mouths, and just I'm dying of laughter when we do that. So if I could turn that into a side hustle and make some good money off of that, screw law, I'm doing that.
There's a guy, I forget his name. I love watching him and his dog. And like he'll count to five or count five, and then the dog will tap him 5 times. And I'm like, how does this dog know how to do that? Like is my dog dumb?
My dog won't even give me a paw without a treat.
My dog only knows how to sit.
I know. No, it's crazy. It's wild. A lot of training, a lot of patience, and if I had the time and the
Uh-huh.
resources to do that, totally, that would be my go-to.
Yep, yep. Um, okay, so that, is there anything else that you want to say that maybe I haven't asked you, or something that you can I don't know, anything that you can say?
I think like we were really thorough with kind of what my kind of take on issues, what my involvement is, what my perspective is. I think unless you want me to give some sort of like closing kind of remarks,
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident with what we've discussed.
Actually, there is one more thing that I find that is happening a lot. It's a phone call that I just had before you and I got on this um, session here. There's a lot of people that are buying homes right now with co-signers,
Hmm.
right? So they're buying them with their moms, their parents, their grandparents. It's because they don't qualify on their own,
Yeah.
and maybe they do qualify, but they work for, like they're bartenders, or they do some sort of work that, I don't know if I could say this out loud, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They need co-signers, right? So when we are putting co-signers on title, because there's two types of co-signers. There's your personal guarantors that don't go on title, and then there's sometimes lenders, they want them to go on title on the ownership of the homes. So I've advised them to go on, the co-signers to go on as 1%, one
Hmm.
for $1. This way, we can take advantage of the land transfer tax for first-time home buyers and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that's important in today's market.
Yeah, so I do see that a lot, especially with kind of younger people or younger first-time home buyers trying to get their first home. I do see a lot of parents co-signing and going on title. So we structure it in such a way that because there's different forms of ownership, tenancy in common, joint tenants. So we do the 1% joint we structure it in a way that the parents only on title for 1%. We do a couple other things to ensure, the property doesn't pass through someone's will or estate, it automatically goes back to the intended beneficiary. But with that, we always recommend doing a trust declaration to really enforce, what we're doing here to say that mom and dad are only on title for mortgage purposes. They are a legal owner, but they have no beneficial interest in the land, meaning that their son or daughter is 100% responsible for mortgage payments, property taxes, property insurance. Everything is there on their shoulders. There has been some changes to our laws in terms of trust, which makes this whole plan and working out joint tenancy with parents a little bit more complex. So that's something that's we're going to see introduced in my practice, shortly. Now, trusts have to be declared and they're taxed. The government's kind of catching on to what people are doing here, and they want it reported, in returns to the CRA. So we do see that a lot, how this is going to look going forward. It may not play out the way people kind of expect, but yeah, it's very prevalent in my practice, seeing parents go on title to support for financial purposes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that new trust law came out December of 2023.
Yeah,
And it's gonna have to be where, if I co-signed for my son, I have to report it on my tax return, right?
yeah,
That it is a, like, not a property that I'm benefiting from, like
yeah.
income or investment wise. I think it protects everybody as a whole. So if that property should sell in the future, and there's capital gains, like there was a profit on it, I'm not going to have to pay capital gains on it because I didn't have any financial interest in that property.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I look at it that way. So I think it's going to protect me if I've been filing to the government every single year that I had no financial interest in this property. I was just a co-signer. When my son goes to sell that property, I have no capital gains, right? So
Correct.
I'm looking at it that way from my perspective. So I think it's a good thing. I think.
Yeah, it's just another thing that people are going to have to be aware of and not fall behind and get penalized for not filing this return. So it's not a one and done sort of thing on the day of
Yeah.
closing. It's a continuing ongoing responsibility to
Yeah.
be accountable for that trust. So
Yeah.
just something else that we're going to have to, be knowledgeable and keep up to date with what's going on with trusts and the law. So it's definitely it's a prevalent thing that in young people's lives and their parents that we're going to continue to see. Yeah.
Continue to see in the future. Yeah. Well, Amanda, it was nice having you.
Thank you.
Like
Lovely
talking
to
to you,
hear
sorry.
on Zoom. Yeah.
I really love how you meant, like, in the introduction, we talked about your dogs and not your husband. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, he's irrelevant.
They're not important, right?
Love him to death, but no, he could take a back seat here. It's let my dog shine. They're the stars.
Yep, yep.
You.
Okay, well, thank you and have a great day.
You too. Thanks a lot,
All
Rasha.
right, thank you. Bye-bye.